Are you sick and tired of being denied credit card after credit card? You keep applying, you keep getting denied, and it's frustrating. Well, did you realize that not every credit card denial is an actual denial? Today we're going to talk about that. My name is Sean and I'm here with my co-host.
Hi everyone, I'm Sherwin, the other half of the Credit Card BS podcast. Today's episode is titled Top 9 Credit Card Application Reconsideration Line Tips. Now, the reconsideration line is an opportunity for you to plead your case with a bank representative if you don't get approved at first for a credit card. Let's jump right into the first tip, which is that you should never take denial for an answer. So, if you apply for a credit card and you get denied, a misconception is that that's just the end of the road. You should just wait and try again later, or you're probably not going to get that card. But actually, you could turn that denial into an approval if you follow some of these steps. So, Sean, why might you need to call reconsideration?
Yeah, sometimes they just need to verify your info, especially if, let's say, you've had like a recent address change. Maybe it's your first card with the bank. Maybe they just have a random check and they just need to verify your info and ask you a few clarifying questions. It doesn't necessarily always mean you were denied. It just means that they may have to check some info. It could be very, very easy.
Yeah, also sometimes if your application is more like a borderline or edge case and your computer doesn't approve you at first, the representative can walk you through a manual review and then you can get approved. We'll go over in more detail what types of things you might be asked in a bit. But another thing you should know is that sometimes when you get denied for a card, that letter that comes in the mail will list some random reasons why you didn't get denied. Like your average age of accounts is too short or too many inquiries in the last 12 months. And you should always take those reasons with a grain of salt, because oftentimes they're just boilerplate language that they put on your letter. So they have something to point to if you ask, but they don't actually reflect the actual reasons why your application was denied. It's more of like a thing they have to do to comply with regulations, and it's not too meaningful. So I would not put too much emphasis into that. Do note that not all issuers offer reconsideration. Most of them do. Some, like Capital One, famously do not. And you typically find the phone number to call a particular issuer just by Googling it. So for example, you Google Chase reconsideration line or American Express reconsideration line, and you'll be able to find those phone numbers pretty easily. Sean, anything else to add before we move on to our second tip?
Yeah, I want to agree with you that like those letters totally are meaningless. Like Citi, for me, I've applied for like the Premier card like 2 to 3 times. And every time in the letter would say one of the primary reasons for denial was not enough credit used out of available existing credit. Not like across Citi cards, but just in general. Like I had too much credit line and too low utilization. But like that's, normally good for your credit score. And also like that doesn't necessarily even mean I'm not using the cards. It just means I'm not having high utilization on my report, meaning I could just be paying off my cards before my statement closes. But yet Citi was claiming that they were denying me for that. So total BS reasons often on those letters. Like, you don't always need to listen to them.
Yeah, bottom line is if you've already applied, like you already took on a hard pull or two, depending on the issuer. So you might as well try to get that application turned into approval. You're not always going to be successful, but if you give up, then you've sort of wasted a hard pull for sure. Now, the second tip I have is that you can actually call in before you get denied if your application isn't instantly approved. So oftentimes you'll apply, it'll say pending, will let you know. And that may require you to eventually have to call in anyway to verify information. So it could help to just call in immediately. That way you can get that information verified if they need it, or you can just have that person on the phone process your application faster so you get to know. I mean, some people are fine with just waiting for the pending and let it play itself out, which is totally fine. I'm personally a little more patient. I want a yes or no answer quicker, so it usually helps to get the representative to basically approve or deny you directly on the phone. Sean, is this something you tend to do when an application goes to pending?
Yeah, I think it depends on the issuer. So like, I think for like Chase business cards, for example, I actually don't do this. Mainly because like on business card applications, they tend to be a little more intense of a recon call than personal cards. Usually for personal cards, I will do it. It really just depends if I'm lazy or not. I think I did this a lot more in the beginning of the game when I was like really, really caring about each card. And I think now at this point, I'm like, I've gotten a bit lazy where sometimes I'll be like, I'll just apply for this card. My 524 is right now, screwed anyways. But I think it's something that like can be nice because you can get the card through quicker. You don't have to, you know, wait for some letter that asks for some niche information or in case you miss a letter or something or you forget. Yeah, it's definitely something I think it can be smart to do as long as you're prepared to answer all the questions.
For sure. That brings us to our third tip. Sean, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, so for Chase and Barclays particular, and this applies to like, technically all credit issuers, but mainly for Chase and Barclays. You can offer to lower your credit line and apply that credit line on your existing cards and then apply that credit line to this new card. And the reason that helps is, right, your credit line at a bank is pretty much your risk exposure to them. That's, theoretically speaking, the maximum loss that they have with you. Of course, it's a little more technical than that, but that's the idea, right? So the bigger credit line you have, the bigger risk you are to the bank. So if you already have a high credit line relative to your income at, let's say, Chase, and then I'm trying to get more cards, they may go, well, you know what, this guy, yeah, he's been a good customer and all that, his report is fine, but like his income's 100K, he's already got 70K of credit line with us. Why does he need more? This is pretty high. It's getting a little, a bad ratio for us. So if you offer to lower some of your credit line and apply to the new card, they're going, well, you know what? They're not, we're not risking them having a higher risk profile with us. It's the same level of risk. They get the card they want. It's, not a really big deal. And so oftentimes that can work at these issuers. It depends on your specific situation. But it's definitely something, especially Chase has been known to do, where they kind of cap you out at some level of credit line to income ratio, and they won't really push you past that. So that's why, sometimes I also can advise, before you're applying for a card, if you have high credit lines on certain cards, you're not using, you can lower them, because lowering your credit line on a card decreases your risk profile with that bank. And so it means if you're applying for more credit with that bank, then you're more likely to just be instantly approved.
Yeah, for sure. And with Chase especially, other times when people are late into the game and they already have a lot of cards with them, it's not that they don't want to give you more cards or more products, but that they just don't want to extend to you more credit. So, oftentimes during reconsideration, transferring credit line from an existing card to that new card will allow you the opportunity to get that new product and bonus and all the benefits that come with it without the bank having to take on extra risk to extend you that credit. So this is something you should keep in mind. It can literally be the difference between you getting the card and you getting denied for a reason that's not super relevant to the goals you have in mind for getting the new credit card. My next tip number 4, is to have answers in mind before you call. And this is especially true for business card applications. Be ready to answer questions pertaining to not only why do you want this card, but also questions about your business. Like, what is the nature of your business? How many employees do you have? How long have you had the business? Why do you need this card for this business? Also, be prepared to answer questions regarding things on your credit report. For example, if you've applied for a lot of cards recently, that's something you might be asked about. If you've had a lot of inquiries lately, know that beforehand and have a good explanation why. And you're going to be more likely to get approved. Sean, do you have more to comment on this tip?
Yeah, I think also saying your answers confidently, right? You have to imagine you're the person on the other end. And, there are people that, let's say you're a recon agent, that there's going to be a certain percent of people that call you that are total fraudsters, that are lying about their income, that are lying about their intentions, that are trying to get cards for bust out fraud. And so, who are you going to trust? The guy that when asked about what their income is and their sources goes, yeah, my income, I think it's about maybe 50K, or the guy that just says 50K, right? Who do you think is more trustworthy in that scenario? You want to say these answers confidently, you have nothing to hide. You don't need to overcompensate or anything, but just sound confident, sound like you know what you're talking about, have the answers prepared so you don't have to think about them. And then as Sherwin was saying, have been asked about specific things on my credit report before. and they want to know the reason, maybe like why you got this car, or like, why you have these inquiries, or also like, not particular to me, but if you have like personal loans, like I don't have any, but I know people that if you have like a personal loan or any kind of like unsecured loan on your report, they may ask about like that specific loan and like what is it for and why you took it out. So that could be like a really, good thing you want to think about before you call in.
For sure. Okay, that is pretty good for that tip. Let's go on to the next tip, number 5. If asked why you want the card, do not mention the sign-up bonus. This is probably not going to be a huge deal, but generally banks like people who will want to keep their cards long-term rather than churners who open their cards just for the first year to get the bonus and then will intend to immediately downgrade, cancel them. So, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that strategy, but if that is your strategy, you probably don't want to reveal it. It wouldn't be in your interest in terms of getting approved. So if asked about why you want the card, you should mention like the long-term benefits of the card, but don't mention the bonus.
Yeah, I totally agree. That one's pretty straightforward. They want profitable customers, not people like us. So
yeah.
Be clear with it. Or don't tell them that. So the next tip, tip 6, if you have high velocity, don't bring it to their attention. Like don't, make it too obvious to them. And so obviously like they're going to be able to see your credit report and see what cards you have on there. And they may ask about it, but like, don't go talking about that. Oh, I'm a credit card churner and I love opening cards for bonuses frequently. And then I close them or whatever. Make it, just try to focus on like, oh, I want this card for this reasons. I want to, increase the relationship I have with this bank or whatever. And if they ask about, why you have high velocity, one of the answers I like to give is, well, so I know one of the important factors in my credit report is average age of accounts. And so when I open a card, I like to kind of do them in a little batch because then I could start the aging clock earlier, right? So that all these cards I have, like these are cards I plan to keep open long term. So I like, to start the age of them starting earlier, because if I get the cards later, well, then my age is younger, which is worse for my report. So it's actually like a good thing for my credit report. I've had that answer work to varying degrees of success, but if they do ask, I think it's a good way to kind of spin it in a way of like, oh, I'm actually being extra responsible because I care about my credit report and I care about my average age of accounts being good, versus like, it looks like bad because you have all these cards, but you can kind of spin it in a positive way.
For sure. And I think that the other reason you don't want to draw attention to it is just like shutdown risk. Like if you already have like 15 chase cards and you're trying to apply for another one, I mean, obviously they can probably see it, but you shouldn't draw attention to like your high number of existing cards, because then you just don't want more eyes on your account thinking that it's for fraud or abuse. Because, we are playing this game legitimately and not using the cards for nefarious purposes, but it can look like that if you just have a lot of accounts or you're really into this hobby. So, if you already have a bunch of accounts, that is sure, I just wouldn't make that a big part of the conversation if you can avoid it.
I agree. And I think this is like an interesting side note of how, like, as I started to realize, like, the reason banks hate MSers, like manufactured spenders, so much has, a lot less to do with the reward side of it than we think. Like, we think all these banks, right, are just trying to deny us the rewards. That people that go out and spend a ton of their cards, like max it out and pay it off every month, and to try to get all these rewards, where it's like, whether it's manufactured spending or just spending on like other like legitimate expenses to try to get the rewards. And like, the reason banks don't like that has a lot less to do with the rewards than you think, because the behavior from a money launderer and a fraudster compared with a credit card optimizer is actually way similar, like way more similar than you might think. Because when you have the ability to, let's say, manufactured spend, basically turn your credit line into a cash equivalent, that is an extremely dangerous power from the bank's view. Because when you're able to do that, that is like how fraud happens, right? That's what people do. They max out their cards into some cash equivalent, and then they either like leave the country or just never pay it off or whatever. That is literally like what fraud looks like. So if you're doing that, now you can do that behavior in a legitimate way, right? You can spend a lot of money to earn points and pay off the cards and all that. That's all fine. That's totally legal, legitimate behavior. But it looks very similar to fraud. So you have to be kind of careful when you do that. And that's the reason, like why Sherwin's saying, if you have this huge credit line and you're constantly open cards, that's like the behavior that fraudsters also do. They're really like, yeah, they don't want to give out all those rewards as well, but like that's like small peanuts compared to what the risk of fraud is. So really, really important to make sure that like you understand the bank's motive and what they what they know fraud looks like, and so you don't kind of make yourself a walking red flag and they think you're doing something bad that you're not.
Yeah, I think that explanation really makes sense. It's just not something you think about it a lot because it's not intuitive. But if you think about it from the bank's perspective, that can give you a bit better sense of how to approach these conversations during recon. Tip number 7 is you should try to understand what the hours of when reconsideration is open and like time your application accordingly. So what I mean is like, for example, if you want to apply for a card, it may not be the best idea to do it on a weekend, say like a late Friday night or Saturday, because then you have to wait till Monday when recon opens to be able to push through the application if you do need to call recon. So I usually keep that in mind when I'm deciding when to apply for a card during the day of the week or time of day. Try to do it, during a weekday or earlier in the day, so then I'll have time to be able to call recon before they close if I need to, just to, kind of take care of it in one sitting.
Definitely. I think, yeah, that's like something really frustrating for me is like when I apply for a card and then I get like denied or pending and I'm like, why'd I do this on a Friday or a holiday or something? Like I just want to get this over with and know what, if I can get this approved or not. And then like waiting for the weekend's like really frustrating.
Now tip number 8 is called the hang up and call again method, or HUCA. Sometimes, you go through the call and you just don't get approved. Most likely you won't get approved if you call in again, but I have seen reports where people call in the second or the third time, and even though they were denied for a second time, they were able to convince another agent to approve that. So sometimes it's person specific, just depending on if this person's willing to approve you. And sometimes it's like the computer issued a denial that the person cannot overturn, that no matter how many times you call it, won't work. So it may be worth trying if you don't get approved the first time after calling in recon. Now, I do want to suggest that you don't go overboard, because usually they'll probably keep track of, if you've already called in, and if someone sees that called in like 8 times and you're trying to get a recon again for the 9th time, that may seem like fraud or abuse and could get your account flagged. So, again, people have had success doing this. Yeah,
definitely be careful about it.
Yeah, people have had success doing this, but like, don't go overboard or else it'll look really suspicious.
Yeah, I've had success with this actually with Barclays, like twice. For other issuers, not really as much. Like usually for me, it's denial's been a denial, but Barclays I've noticed like the reps are kind of way more, polarizing, where like some, are pretty chill, some are very strict. So I think like 2 to 3 like total calls to recon is like probably a good range. Past 3, I wouldn't really go past 3. I mean, I guess you could do 4, but like beyond that, I wouldn't do that. That's a little bit, you enter fraud territory. You see some guy trying to get this credit card, calls in 10 times, 10 different reps. You start to wonder, why do they need this card so much? Why do they want it so much? Is it really just the rewards? Like, why are they so dedicated? Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And the final tip number 9, is sometimes you don't even need to call in. And I've noticed this like with Chase business cards a lot, where if you're impending, as long as it wasn't like a flat out denial, if it's in like pending, a lot of times it can just get pushed through automatically without you needing to call in. And the pro of that, if that happens, is you don't risk stepping on yourself. Whereas let's say I'm apply for a Chase business card and it just goes to pending, right? And I'm like, oh no, I gotta get it right now. And I call up and the rep asks me a question and I answer it wrong because maybe I was unprepared. And then I screwed myself and then now I get denied for the card. Whereas if I didn't do anything, goes into pending, maybe it's auto approved and I didn't have to call in, I didn't have to do any work, I got the card. Maybe it's denied. Well, now I can call recon and still do, effectively the same step as when it was in pending and try to get it back. So there's an argument that sometimes you should just let it go in pending.
Yeah, like at the very least, if you're going to call it, make sure you know very clearly what you put on the application. Like, for example, if you put a certain amount of income on the application, and then you forget for some reason, and then you say different type of rep, that can work against you. So just be very aware of keeping your information consistent if you choose to call in when it's pending.
Definitely, definitely.
Okay, so now to wrap this episode up, we're going to do a practice reconsideration call between the two of us. So Sean is going to pretend to have applied for a Chase business card in a Wednesday pending, and I'm going to pretend to be the phone representative. So Sean, go ahead.
Hi, so I'm calling to see if I can do a reconsideration on the Chase Inc. preferred card I just applied for. It said it was denied, but I was just, curious if a reconsideration was an option.
Sure. Could you tell me a bit about why you want this card?
Yeah, so I run a online tutoring business, and it would just be nice to have a travel rewards card that I could use for my standard business expenses and then be able to use those points to redeem for travel for myself.
Yeah, how long have you had this business?
For 3 years.
So I noticed that you have a lot of recent accounts on your credit report, as well as already several cards associated with this business with us. Can you tell me why you are applying for yet another card for this business?
Yeah, so my existing cards for this business from Chase are, not the preferred. So I'm applying for the Inc. preferred here. And the other ones, I can't transfer the points out. So this card would be really nice because I could actually have some travel benefits and I could transfer the points out. And for the other accounts, so what I like to make sure that when I get cards, I usually kind of get them a couple back to back because I know the average age of accounts is like really, really important for my credit. And every card I open, I always want to keep for the long term. And so I know that getting a card earlier means I can start the aging of the account earlier. And so that's going to be better for my credit report long term.
I see. Okay. Thank you for that information. I'm going to go ahead and resubmit your application and see if we can get it pushed through. Now, I do see on my system that we're not able to extend to you this new card because you have too much credit already extended. So unfortunately, we are not able to approve this card at this time.
Would it be possible if I was offered to lower my credit line on my other business cards that we could just reallocate some of that existing credit line to this new account?
Sure, let me take a look. So the minimum credit limit for this card would be $5,000. You currently have $6,000 on card 1 and $4,000 card 2. So we can pull from those for this new account. How would you like
that? Sounds good. So sorry. Let's take 3,000 4,000 from card 1, and then let's take another 1,000 from card 2, and then let's combine those to open this new account.
Great. So I was able to process that for you, and congratulations. You are now approved for this card. Is there anything else I can help you with today?
No, that's everything. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Okay, cool. So hopefully that was somewhat helpful for you all. You can see, try to integrate particular examples, questions, and answers of the things we've discussed. So if you found this episode helpful, please consider subscribing to our channel, giving this video a like. Have you had any experiences with reconsideration? Please leave those in the comments below. Also, if you're interested in applying for any credit cards, please consider using our referral links down in the description below. It actually really helps support this channel. And Sean, why don't you plug our Discord?
So if you want to connect with an elite group of award travelers and credit card enthusiasts entirely for free, check out the Traveling Discord at the link in the description. You will learn a ton, I promise you. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next week.